Hi and welcome to morning stretching. In between the exercises I'm going to read something about active transport from Cellular Biology and try to learn it. And participating in the exercise is at your own risk. So let's start with the first exercise. The legs are standing wide apart, the toes are pointing a bit to the outside. We are breathing in and out. And again in and out. And in, out. And again in and out. And another round, breathe in and out. And again in and out. And now we're closing the legs. Out. And that was the opening exercise. So we always breathe in through the nose into the chest and out through the mouth. So breathe always in deep through the nose into the chest and out through the mouth. Now to active transport from cellular biology. So the first thing you have to know is that molecules and ions exist. So whatever they are, molecules and ions exist. And cells exist in the human body, and around the cells in the human body there is a layer, a membrane. So ions and molecules exist, and in the human body there are cells, and around these cells there is a membrane, a layer, a membrane. Next exercise. We're having the legs standing a bit more than shoulder wide apart. We are breathing in and bringing our arms up. And we're breathing out and going to one side. And now breathe in and out the rib cage. So breathe in. And again out. And again in. And out back into the middle. And breathe in again. And out now to the other side. And breathe in and out the rib cage. Breathe in. And out. And again in. And out back into the middle. So ions and molecules exist, and in the human body are cells, and around these cells there's a layer, a membrane. The membrane layer around the cells is not completely closed, but molecules or ions can move through it. So that layer, that membrane layer, is not completely closed. It's not completely shuttered off. There can molecules or ions pass through it or go through it or whatever. The transportation of ions or molecules through this membrane layer of cells is called active transport. So there can be transported ions or molecules through this membrane layer, and that is called active transport. So active transport is transporting ions or molecules through that layer, which is around of cells in the human body. And the next exercise, again, the legs standing a bit over and shoulder wide apart. We are breathing in. And out, one hand slides down the leg and the other shoulder stays down. And breathe in. And out, and we're taking the arm over. And breathe in and out the rib cage. And out. And again in. Out back into the middle. And now breathe in. And out, and one hand slides down the leg and the other shoulder stays down. And breathe in. And out, and we're taking the arm over. And breathe in and open the rib cage. So breathe in. And out. And again in. And out back into the middle. Active transport is the transportation of ions and molecules through this membrane layer, which is around of cells in the human body. To transport ions and molecules from one side of the membrane to the other, the active transport needs cellular energy. So it's not declared in any specific way what cellular energy is, but this active transport, transporting ions and molecules through that layer, needs this cellular energy. Two types of active transport which require cellular energy to move ions and molecules through the membrane layer of cells are primary and secondary active transport. So there is primary active transport and secondary active transport. So not just one type, for moving molecules or ions through this layer around of membranes, which uses cellular energy, There are two types: primary active transport and secondary active transport. Next exercise. Now we're having our feet standing together. We're breathing in and lifting the arms up. And we're breathing out and one hand comes down. And now breathe in and reach to both ends. So breathe in and reach. And breathe out. And breathe in again. And out and one hand comes down. And breathe in and reach. And out. Now for another round. So breathe in. And out and one hand comes down. And breathe in and reach. And out. And again in. And out and one hand comes down. And breathe in and reach. And out. So primary active transport and secondary active transport are the two types of active transport to transport with the usage of cellular energy, molecules and ions through the membrane, which is a layer around our cells in the human body. Primary active transport uses adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. Primary, the first one, primary uses adenosine triphosphate. And the next exercise, we're having the legs standing wide apart. We are breathing in, and we're breathing out, and we're hanging down. And now breathe deep in through the nose into the chest, and out through the mouth. And again in, and out. And again in, and out. And again in. And out we go into one leg. And breathe in. And out. And again in. And out we go into the other leg. And breathe in. And out. And again in. And out back into the middle. And breathe in. And out we're coming slowly up with a round back, making it top up backwards, shoulder up. So primary active transport uses adenosine triphosphate. And secondary active transport uses an electrochemical gradient. Primary active transport uses adenosine triphosphate, and secondary active transport uses an electrochemical gradient. The enzyme Sodium-Potassium pump, for example, transports sodium ions out of the cells and potassium ions into the cells, so the cell works properly. So there is an enzyme that is called Sodium-Potassium pump, and it pumps sodium ions out and potassium ions into the cells as a means of active transport to make the cell work properly. The next exercise, we're having your feet standing together this time, and we're breathing in, and breathing out again, and we're hanging again down. And breathe deep in through the nose into the chest. And out through the mouth. And again in. And out. And breathe in. And out. And again in. And out. And now breathe in the last time. And out we're coming slowly up with a round back and making it top and backwards, shoulder up. Primary active transport uses adenosine triphosphate, and secondary active transport uses an electrochemical gradient. And an example of this active transport is the Sodium-Potassium pump, and it pumps sodium out and potassium into the cells to make the cells work properly. And problems with active transport can lead to further problems. Malfunctioning chloride channels can cause cystic fibrosis. So, if there's a problem with the active transport, to transport ions or molecules through the layer of a membrane layer, then if there's a problem with the chloride channels, with the chloride channels, then that can lead to cystic fibrosis. And if there's a defect with the glucose transport, then that can result in diabetes. The next exercise. Now we're having the toes pointing to the outside, and we have around an all-aligned space between our heels of feet, and we're breathing in and lifting our arms up, and we're breathing out and going down. And now we're pressing with the elbows against the inside of the knees, and we're breathing in and straightening up the back. And out, and we're coming up with the back. And breathing in. And out, back into the garden pose. And breathe in and come again, turn up. And out again, turn back up. And in. And out the last time into the garden pose. Breathe in and come turn up. And now out, and we're coming slowly actually up. Very slowly, in one straight line, coming up. So, a problem with this active transport can lead to further problems. Malfunctioning chloride channel can lead to cystic fibrosis, and defects with glucose transport can cause diabetes. Can result in diabetes. Active transport uses cellular energy to move ions or molecules through the membrane layer around of cells with primary active transport using adenosine triphosphate and secondary active transport using an electrochemical gradient. Sodium-Potassium pump transports sodium ions out and potassium ions into the cells. Malfunctioning chloride channels causes cystic fibrosis. Defects with glucose can result in diabetes with glucose transport. The next exercise. It's the last one. We're having a standing leg and we're having a mobile leg, and we're placing the heel of the mobile leg above the knee of the standing leg. Now we're breathing in. We're doing this only if you can do it without injuring your knee, our knee. We're breathing in. And we're breathing out, and we're going down. So there are two types of active transport. The primary active transport, which uses primary adenosine triphosphate, and the secondary active transport using an electrochemical gradient. And that uses it for transporting ions or molecules through the membrane layer around of cells in the human body. And if there's a problem with this transportation, this active transport, changing to the other side, of ions or molecules through the layer of a membrane, then that can lead to further problems. For example, malfunctioning chloride channels can cause cystic fibrosis, and defects with glucose transport can result in diabetes. And another example of enzyme transport is the enzyme Sodium-Potassium pump, and that pumps sodium out and potassium into the cells. And we're done. Now just the opening exercise again. It's closing exercise. We're breathing in and out. And again in and out. And again in and out. Again in and out. Now we're breathing in, closing the legs, and we're done with the morning stretching. So there are two types: the primary active transport using adenosine triphosphate, and the secondary active transport using an electrochemical gradient. That all needs cellular energy, and that transports that whole thing, this active transport, ions or molecules through the layer of a membrane, with a membrane layer around the cells. And an example is the sodium-potassium pump enzyme, which transports sodium out and potassium ions in to the cells. And problems with this active transportation of ions and molecules through the layer of membrane can cause further problems. For example, malfunctioning chloride channels can cause cystic fibrosis, and a defect with glucose transport can result in diabetes. I thank you very much, and until the next time.